to bring it in. Still looking to Barry. Barry launches a three, no good, as the buzzer goes off. And the Lakers prevail 93-91.
Wow, the inbound pass to Barry, who had contact with his defender, then launched the shot within the time frame. It was Derek Fisher who came over. Oh my, that's contact.
That's not a foul?
That should be a foul.
But no foul was called, and that is water cooler topic #1 today. Our top story, the NBA playoffs, where last night all the eyes were on the Western Conference Finals. The Lakers and Spurs, they played the full 40, but this one pretty much came down to, as you saw, the final seconds and a foul call the Spurs wanted but did not get.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Without it, the reigning champs won the game 93-91, as you mentioned earlier. LA now has a 3-1 series lead, and that means the Spurs need to win out in order to advance to the 2008 NBA Finals. Every game a must-win. That is a hot topic, along with the no-foul call, as you mentioned. Mike Monroe joining us now from the San Antonio Express News. Mike, let's start with that foul call. What did Brent Barry and Greg Popovich have to say afterwards about it?
Well, it was really interesting. Nobody in that locker room, Spurs locker room, was saying that that was a foul that should have been called. You wondered if Pop maybe told everybody, no excuses, guys. But Brent Barry in particular said that's not a foul that's going to get called in the Western Conference Finals. He said maybe in a regular season game, sure, but not in that situation. And there was an awful lot of contact in that game that didn't get called, a lot of no calls. So I think the Spurs really were okay with that. Brent wouldn't say it on the record, but I think in his heart of hearts, he'd love a do-over on that play after Derek Fisher got in the air. I think he would have loved to have gone up and into him. You know, Manu Ginobili said something very interesting, which was that Brent didn't sell that foul call very hard. Of course, Manu is the best at selling that play. When he gets a guy up in the air, you know he's going to the line. And if he'd had that play, I think the foul call gets made for sure. But of course, you know, as we say down here in South Texas, if the fox didn't stop to lift his leg, he would have caught the chicken.
I like the saying. Let me ask you a little bit more about this play, though. Brent Barry even mentioned it in some of that post-game sound that we heard. This wasn't how the play was supposed to go. Do we know what was supposed to have happened?
Yes, Brent said that the play was designed to go to Manu in the corner to create something. They thought with 2.1 seconds left, there was time for Manu to put the ball on the floor and make something happen. And, you know, that really says a lot about Greg Popovich, because Manu had a tough game, but he still had a lot of faith in Manu to do that. They also knew, or had a pretty good notion, that Kobe Bryant was not going to switch the pick that Manu set on Sasha Vujacic. So they had a pretty clear idea that Brent would be open at the three-point line. So the play worked on second option, but nobody had a clue that Derek Fisher was going to make the great defensive read that he did and get over there and defend that shot.
Besides this no call, what hurt the Spurs the most in this game last night?
Well, Manu scored 30 points in Game 3, and he scored 7 last night. Manu had a tough night. The Lakers defense gets the credit for that. They took the ball out of Manu's hands. Manu also didn't make his first shot, and that was a real key for him in the previous game when he did. And he talked about that after the game, that the first couple of shots wouldn't fall. He kind of knew that things weren't going to go well for him. He knew that Tim Duncan and Tony Parker were having big nights. He was fine with going to them. But that was a huge factor for the Spurs, and not being able to get an defensive rebound.
They go now to LA for Game 5. It's a must-win, as I said, throughout now. They have to win the next 3. What did the Spurs say about the situation that they are now in?
Well, Brent Barry, who's our go-to guy for quotes, said when they were in an 0-2 hole, that was a big hill to climb. And now that they're down 1-3 with 2 games in Los Angeles, it's Mount Everest to climb. So that's been done. That's been done a few times. And Manu Ginobili said they have not lost belief in themselves. They know that they had an awful lot of things go wrong in Game 4 last night that they can correct by the time they get to Los Angeles, and that's what their intent is.
All right, Mike Monroe with the latest on the Spurs. Thank you. And to note here, very worth noting, the Spurs have never come back from a 3-1 hole that they now find themselves in. Jay?
Well, Dana, foul or not, this much is certain. rewind to 10 months ago, and it looked like these Lakers, who now have 3 games to win 1 to play for an NBA championship, were really on the brink of rebuilding. As Kobe wanted out, no one knew what the future held. Instead, they're 1 win away from making it back to the NBA Finals. And let's bring in KCAL TV reporter for the Lakers, John Ireland. And John, we're going to get to the talk about the non-call at the end of the game. But prior to that, the Lakers lost possession of the basketball on a play that appeared the ball hit the rim and the shot clock should have been reset. I'm wondering what the talk is after the game, after that no call.
Well, Jay, it's all tied together. Their point would be, and the Lakers, you know, I talked to several of them, including Fisher, right after the game ended, that, you know, what role did the officiating play? And they feel there were several calls, including that one that you point out, that could have been made and could have gone the other way. The Spurs went to the free throw line more than the Lakers did last night. The Spurs went 26 times. The Lakers went 19 times. And something that hasn't come up on your show this morning yet is that right in the middle of this is Joe Crawford, who was an official that the Spurs have had trouble with in the past. And as a matter of fact, Joey was the closest official to Fisher on the very last play at the end of the game. So officiating was an overall theme throughout the game, and that call that you make reference to was one that could have gone the other way, certainly would have given the Lakers more time, and had then they just inbounded the ball, they would have had 2 free throws. So when Brent Berry says that's not a call that they're going to make at the end of the Western Conference Finals, there are several things that happened last night that fall under that umbrella.
All right, that's clearly the theme. After the game, on the broadcast, Kobe kind of looked like the cat who ate the canary. He didn't have much to say about that last play. What else were the Lakers saying about that non-foul?
The general consensus was that, and I talked to Fisher about this twice, once right after the game and then once last night on the plane, he was talking about the fact that it was a physical game and they were letting them play. And if I put together all the opinions, Jay, of the 5 or 6 people I talked to, it goes back to Mike Monroe's point of had Brent Berry jumped forward rather than jump straight up and down. You know, Fisher was in the air. Once he was in the air, had Brent jumped forward and shot the ball, the officials would have had no choice but to call that. But since Brent almost avoided contact, if you watch that play closely, Fisher jumps up and Brent kind of drops down and says, okay, I'm going to let him come down and then I'm going to go up and shoot. Had he jumped into him, I think he gets that call. And then, Jay, it's a 3-shot foul.
Right.
Even if the referees would have called the foul on Fisher, the way that went down, it's a 2-shot foul because Brent's dribbling. Had the minute Derek gone in the air, Brent jumped forward in a shooting motion, he not only would have got the foul, he would have had a chance to win the game because they were down 2, and that would have been a 3-shot foul.
Yeah, inexplicably put the ball on the floor one time after the contact. It did seem a bit odd. All right, let's try to fast forward now on this because the Lakers have 3 games to win 1 to get to the finals. How confident are they about doing that, especially when they almost blew that 7-point lead in the last minute?
Not only that, Jay, they blew a 20-point, they had to come from behind by 20 in Game 1. They still have a ton of respect for the Spurs, and privately the Lakers will tell you they absolutely do not want a Game 7 in this series. And you have to figure if the Spurs can win Game 5, they've got a great chance they would be the favorite in Game 6 on Saturday night in San Antonio. So the Lakers are treating this game tomorrow night, Thursday in Los Angeles, as Game 7, even though it's Game 5 and they have 3 chances to win it. Their mantra is, we aren't coming back. They do not want to go back to Texas. They do not want to let the Spurs up while they're down. And I think if the Spurs win this game Thursday, even though it would constitute them coming back from 3-1, and as you guys pointed out, they've never done it. But I think if they win this game Thursday, it lets it opens the can of worms. They've got a game they'd be favored in on Saturday in Game 6, and then you have a veteran team against a team that has never played a Game 7. This group of Lakers has never played a Game 7, and the closest thing to it was 2 years ago in Phoenix on that team with Kobe and Odom that got blown out by 30 in a Game 7. They don't want that. So I think you're going to see them at the top of their game in Game 5.
Well, Barry may have summed it up best. After the game, he said, we had a hill to climb. Now that hill is Mount Everest. John Ireland with the latest on the Lakers. John, great work as always. Thanks.